So this is the main turning point in the film, and if the audience haven't worked it out already from the way Hitchcock has been building it up gradually, this is the scene where we really start to understand that Scotty is not quite the protagonist we thought he was at the start. If we look at the composition of this shot, it's classic Hitchcock in many ways. We can see all those doorways forming those arches and framing the characters. We've got women carefully choreographed in terms of the mise-en-scene and what they're wearing. Again, the framing is adding to all that. This is a film all about the idea of the gaze and looking, which Laura Mulvey correctly identified as a feature of Vertigo. This time, Judy is looking at the women. Her identity at this point is separate, so she's a non-looker, but swiftly she's going to be sucked in. Scotty's gaze, of course, is fixed on her. But we can see all the eye lines all heading towards the same idea, which is a woman in a grey dress, this obsession with female clothes. Hitchcock has built up the grey dress as a fetish object by this point. We've seen that Judy has it hidden in her closet. We know Scotty's obsession over it, so even though this isn't quite the right dress, the suspense is there because we understand where Hitchcock is going with this. Here we see a model who is of course coded with to be looked at-ness, and all the other characters bar one in the scene are all staring at her. We've seen Scotty in previous scenes looking at different women similarly dressed, trying to find the right one, and here all the characters are looking. We see the three female faces in contrast to Scotty's face. He's looking very stern. It's definitely not right. We see Judy maintaining a sense of politeness at this point. She's obviously worked out what's going on, as we can see in her expression coming up. This whole point of the main character looking at another woman is all here in this particular shot. All the characters' gazes are all on the same one. If we look at the composition, it fits in with the theme of the film as a whole. We've got the archways there, the framing. We've also got this idea of the vertiginous drops. So if I draw a diagram over the shot, we can see the peaks and troughs, which is why the film is set in San Francisco, because that's the landscape, but also the idea of the giddiness, the vertigo and the fear of heights, the acrophobia going on. It's all there in the mise-en-scene in this one shot and the composition of this one shot. If we isolate all the other female characters apart from the model and Scotty, it is still Scotty's gaze permanently fixed on the idea of searching for this ideal woman. So we cut from the long shot to a closer shot. This time we, the audience, are also looking at the woman in the grey dress. We're looking at it from a different angle from all the other characters, but their gaze is fixed to the centre of the screen where we see her bottom. We, of course, are looking from the other direction, but the effect is the same. It's staring at the woman in the grey dress. There's also a substitute woman in a different grey dress at the side. She's not of interest to Scotty, possibly because she's brunette. Remember, this is still the 1950s and we are working within the studio system, so this is Hitchcock, typically for him as an auteur working within that system, slipping in a moment of erotica. If we look at this shot in terms of performance, compare the look on Judy's face with the look on Scotty's face. She's keeping a polite veneer. Scotty, on the other hand, is growing dissatisfied. His masculine aggression is starting to re-emerge after about 10 or 15 minutes of identityless wandering around. He's not happy here. Still the same shot, the woman has walked out of it. Now his gaze can turn to the shop assistant. We see his dissatisfaction starting to grow. Note the ashtray in the foreground. That dates the film, doesn't it? We cut from that rigid, polite smile from Judy to this shot here. That's a very typical Hitchcock move, to a change of expression as Hitchcock changes the angle to a closer shot from a low angle. A very typical Hitchcock move to take an ordinary situation, people buying clothes, and throw in a slightly strange angle to introduce the idea of upset, something wrong. The look on her face matches that perfectly. She definitely knows what Scotty's doing at this point. This is one of the reasons I would say that we shouldn't underestimate how much Hitchcock is asking the spectator to identify with Judy in the last third of the film. Much more so than I think than Scotty. Also note the two different gazes from the two characters. Judy turns her gaze almost towards us as the two women confer in the background. Judy is at this point between frames, not quite the masterpiece as the woman in the portrait as she will become later, and as Madeleine she was earlier. She will truly fit into that when she re-emerges with her hair done up in the climactic scene later on. We cut to what's presumably Scotty's point of view, still gazing this time at two women in grey dresses, neither of which are quite right. The one on the left, notably worn by the blonde woman, is slightly closer to what it is he's looking for. And of course they head towards a door frame. Reverse shot. The expressions on the two actors' faces is telling us a lot here. Their gazes are not at each other, perhaps reflecting the way that Scotty and Midge are framed in the rest of the film, where their respective gazes are away from each other, suggesting that their partnership isn't working at this point. Notably, Judy is clutching onto a green jacket, I think it is, at that point. She's really starting to lose her identity here. She's trying to cling on desperately, but it's slipping away. Here we have the same shot. Judy is really agitated. Scotty is attempting to reassert his male dominance. We see a slight unease in the shop assistant. She recalls that they have exactly the suit Scotty is after in stock, which is lucky. Bit of a screenwriting fudge perhaps, but we'll let that one pass. So now we've got the anticipation of, is the real grey suit going to appear? It's a tiny moment of suspense, but Hitchcock seeds these throughout the entire film so that we are constantly anticipating what's going to come next. Note also the mirror in the background to the shot. The mirror is going to become really important in a second. Scotty's pleased with this. Judy is even more agitated. So we've got the anticipation. If we look at the performance here, the suspense is coming from the two characters. Scotty is anticipating getting what he wants. Judy's also anticipating Scotty getting what he wants. She doesn't want it. Reverse shot, the shop assistant responds. Closer shot of Judy and Scotty. Shallow focus. We're really concentrating on their expressions at this point. It's a really subdued colour scheme in this whole sequence. Grey is the dominant colour. Judy's brown dress, Scotty's tie, they really contrast with some of the more vibrant colours later on. Is this a theme of grey and the grey suit? Or is this lowering the vibrancy of the colour palette in anticipation of Madeleine's resurrection later on? So their gazes meet at last in the scene, and it's not happy. We cut to this shot of Judy. Again, shallow focus. Her response is paramount to the sequence. We, of course, as an audience, thanks to Hitchcock giving us the big reveal, know why she's so agitated, even though the idea of frankly being bullied into how she's going to look is already probably making us as spectators uneasy. Judy looks like a small girl at this point, standing in the corner. Again, we cut on action, and this time we follow Scotty round. This is the most active he's been since Madeleine's death, and he's moving far more quickly than that slow, languid, partially comatose Scotty we saw earlier. And he's really aggressive this time. Notice Judy in the mirror, the doppelganger effect. There's two of her. We've also got her framed, and the focus follows Scotty as he heads towards her. And now we see two Scotties. So we've got both characters doubled. So this whole idea of duality, all the characters in some way have two separate personalities. The way Scotty holds Judy's arm is violent. It's a subtle moment in many ways, but this is the point where anybody who hasn't become agitated by his behaviour really is disturbed at the character we've been following for 2 hours and the way he's developed. It's almost parallel with the way Hitchcock in Psycho makes us identify with a character only to turn them around. Hitchcock has done this a lot in his films, make the heroic character very dubious in many ways, very morally dubious, or associate them with the villain. And although there are no more scenes with Scotty and Elster in the film, Scotty's behaviour becomes much more Elster-like, more controlling, more overtly bullying of the female, shaping her quite violently. And it's as big a shock as Hitchcock bumping off his main characters halfway through the film. We see the massive turn in Scotty's behaviour as the character we've been mostly led to identify with. A double shock for contextual audiences who would be used to James Stewart in very different roles. He seems to have been a fairly typical James Stewart character up until this point. We cut quite significantly to the shop assistant who mirrors the spectator's reaction. Everybody in the audience at this point is now having worrying thoughts about Scotty, and she mirrors that response. Her gaze would follow the eyeline match to the characters off screen. She too is worried about this gentleman who had seemed so polite and was just interested in clothes. Very aggressive now, and it has become very difficult to identify with Scotty at this point. And surely our allegiances are heading more towards Judy. Duality. Notice the reflected image of Scotty is split down the middle, perhaps the damaged other half. And to break the suspense, at that moment, in comes the actual grey suit. The shop assistant puts on what presumably something of a false professional smile at this point, but this is what we've been waiting for. Coming, of course, out of a doorway, anticipating the resurrection in the later scene. A closer shot, the dual reaction split across the mirror. So we see Judy from two different profiles. There's that profile shot, of course, again. She doesn't like it. Scotty, again, two different profiles. He does like it, it's perfect, this is what he's after. The scene has become really disturbing at this point. Okay, so the model, turning round, emphasises the whole idea of to be looked at-ness, the idea of human perfection and artificiality that Madeline is. Here we see another woman fulfilling that role. Note the clothes around, like various versions of that grey suit. Scotty's keen, and here we see the pattern that's going to form over the next few minutes of the film. He's not satisfied. He's got this. Okay, next it's the other dress that he seems to remember perfectly from having glimpsed once. He's going to go for the shoes. It's still not perfect. He wants the hair right. Judy's truly disturbed at this. The two clothes models have gone and the shop assistant is surprised. The mise-en-scene focuses on clothes still. Judy's pleading with Scotty at this point, but it's too late. And of course we dissolve into the next shot, which is Judy trying on different shoes. So overall, a huge turning point in the way that we look at the characters, the defining point where we shift our allegiance as spectators from Scotty to Judy.